Okay, so what to expect today? We'll go over engagement, so just overall donor relations and the wheel of donor relations, giving societies, and then everyone's favorite part about nonprofit development is data and CRM and the power of a clean data and clean CRM. So this is, and I'm probably blocking, let me stand over here. This is the wheel of donor relations that we talk about in the collegiate athletic space a lot that helped me a lot when I was going into Stanford and just in general talking about donor relations. So when we're thinking about donor relations, we can kind of break it up into 5 different parts. We have acknowledgement, so that's sending our thank yous, making sure people feel appreciated for their donation. We have recognition, accountability, and then today we're going to be talking about these 2 parts on the right, communication and engagement, as well as impact reporting. So at the end of the day, our donors want to feel special beyond their monetary gift, so we want to tell them you matter beyond your giving, as well as you are making a difference. So donors really want to know where their money is going to, but they also want to know how much they are making an impact themselves. So this is more kind of collegiate athletic space, but I kind of want to talk more about how we can give donor feedback as well as standard impact reports in general. So this was so helpful for me when I learned more about donor relations, breaking up into this wheel and the 5 different segments of that. So this question is, what does engagement mean to you? I definitely want everyone to think about that in their space. What does engagement mean to you? Is that doing donor reporting? We have events, newsletters, surveys. There's so many different things of how we are interacting with our donors. I put a few asterisks next to donor reporting because I think that is probably one of the most important ways we can engage with our donors. Donors want to know where their money is going to every year. They want to be able to put faces to the organization. They want to feel like they are a part of the organization in some way. With events were a huge thing that we relied on a lot I was with the Giants Community Fund, and we realized that the more events that we had didn't necessarily mean we were getting more money or we were interacting with more people. It actually took away more staff time. So we really thought about the events that we were having and wanted to be a little bit more strategic with our events. But that also comes down to our surveys. How do you know what your donors want if you don't ask them? It sounds so simple and so archaic, but it really comes down to what do your donors want? So with the Giants Community Fund, we thought our big donors really wanted autographed items. We thought that they wanted signed baseballs and bats and everything. And they actually didn't. They didn't have enough space in their house for additional things. They wanted to be a part of the team a little bit more. So they wanted the nicer seats. They wanted to attend events where they felt like they were more on the VIP side. So I think that depends on your organization, depends on the events that you're throwing, but it is really important to survey your donors and ask what they want. At Stanford Athletics, we didn't know who our donors wanted to hear from. I think that is a huge thing. Do you want to hear from student athletes? Do you want to hear from coaches? Do you want to hear from our athletic director? And most of our acknowledgement letters and most of our social media came from our athletic director because we thought that was one of the more powerful voices that we have at Stanford Athletics. But in reality, they actually wanted to hear from coaches. They wanted to hear from Tara Vanderveer. They wanted to hear from our head basketball coach. They wanted to hear how the strategy of making our team the way it is. But we wouldn't have known that if we hadn't surveyed them and taken the time to really go through different feedback. And then, this is the kicker, you have to follow through with the feedback. So if you're asking a survey, you have to be prepared to follow through with the feedback that they give you, or they will stop engaging with you because they will feel like their voice isn't being heard. Newsletters, I think that we all do newsletters, and it's very hard sometimes to understand if these newsletters are actually being read. If you're putting so much of your people power and your energy into these newsletters, but are people reading them? Are they consuming all this energy that we're putting in? So we have, in both the Giants and Stanford, we have pivoted to newsletters where you can get those metrics back. So you can see who's opening your newsletters. You can see actually where they are on a geographical map. And then you can see, okay, maybe we don't do a newsletter every month. Maybe we do it every few months. Maybe we do it quarterly. And then if people are opening those more, if they're interacting with you more, then you can start to make decisions accordingly. When it comes to donor reporting, this is an area where I feel like when you have more energy and more time, you could put more space into that. So this is an example of a report that we do with Stanford Athletics. And again, this is one of those that we have more people power to do this, but we reach out to all of our student athletes that are on scholarship and have them write letters to their donors. And then at the end of every fiscal year, we send those reports to their donors. And this really helps. Our donors really look forward to hearing who they're supporting. They go to football games, volleyball games, field hockey games to look at the athlete and make a connection with that athlete. And it really helps sort of merge the gap between just being the donor and having the organization. It helps them really put faces to names and their donation to somebody that is really making an impact on the team. So this is something when I came to Stanford, I was like, wow, that's awesome that we can do that, but it does take a lot of time and energy. So I understand that this is one of the sides where if you don't have as much energy and people power, it may be hard to do, but I've seen the impact tenfold just being at Stanford for the past year or so. It even helps our donors have turned into mentors to our student athletes. So it really goes beyond the donor donation amount. And that kind of comes back to that wheel that I was talking about to our donor. You are making an impact. You matter beyond your donation. And these reports really help them and really show that. This is on the more low budget side. So on the Giants Community Fund, I was in charge of the reporting, and this was all built on Canva, and you can get a very cheap Canva membership. It's actually free, or you can do Canva Pro for not that much a year. And we sent this out quarterly, and we sent it out to a specific group of people, our William A. Scholars donors. These areas are pointing at, there's a ton of data around pictures, so people really want to see faces on these newsletters. I know that we're all in sports, so we have, like for Stanford, we have football, we have basketball, we have baseball. With the Giants, we have a ton of Oracle Park pictures. But at the end of the day, our donors want to see faces. They want to see who their donation is making impact on. They want to be able to follow these scholars. They want to be able to follow these athletes throughout their tenure with the Giants Community Fund. And then the other pointed out what's on deck. What can our donors expect in these next couple of weeks, next couple of months, or the season? How can they keep interacting with you? So you have to let them know how they can interact with you so that you can continue to engage with them. So this, again, is on the lower budget side. I think this took me a few hours, and then sent it out to our donors and received good feedback from it as well. Another way to engage with donors is creating a giving society. So this might feel a little bit intimidating. I know some organizations in here have giving societies already. So I highlighted a giving society that I saw on one of your websites. But creating a giving society really helps with engagement. It really helps drive certain segments of donors from maybe a lower level to a mid-level, and it makes them feel special. It makes them feel a part of your organization. But segmentation is key on that. So what I mean by that is being able to take a look at your donors and see where the gaps are. So with the Giants Community Fund, this was one of my biggest projects, was creating a home run giving circle. And we saw that we had a lot of donations and donors at that $1 to $1,000 level, which was great. And we were able to see an impact there. And then we saw donors on the higher level, but we really lacked donations in between. We were trying to figure out how do we engage with donors that are already there, but how do we bump them up maybe from a lower tier to a mid-tier? How do we make them feel like they're a part of the Giants Community Fund family, that they're a part of our Giants? While they're already engaging with us, but can we bump them up a little bit more? Starting small and starting reasonable is also huge. So on the nonprofit side, I understand that we all need input from our board of directors. We need them to be as engaged with our ideas so that we can start to push forward. So it doesn't make sense to start off with a giving society that you think you're going to 2x your mid-tier in a year. You just have to make sure that you're measuring your goals as you're going forward so you can present that to your board of directors and let them know, hey, we saw 10 more donors in this segmentation. We saw 20 more donors. Make sure you're staying on top of the data so that when you do go to the board, when you have your board meetings, you can really see that you are making a difference, that you're pushing that envelope a little bit more. And then we'll talk about gifts and acknowledgement a little bit later. So how we can acknowledge our donors in that area, how we can make them feel special as they're walking around the course or they're walking around the ballpark or wherever they may be. These are a few questions that I wrote out when you are thinking about starting a giving society. There's tons of data out there. There's tons of things that you can look up. But I would encourage you to start thinking about what groups are you trying to target? Are you trying to get to that higher tier? If you're trying to target that higher tier, you need to start thinking of experiences that higher tier would want to make them go from one segment to the next. What is the natural cutoff in your donor demographic? So like I was talking about with the Giants Community Fund, we saw just a natural drop after that $1,000 mark. So we were trying to figure out how we can really target people in that area that they're already giving, but can they give a little bit more? And can we encourage them to push to that next segment so that we can continue to engage with them? And like I was saying, what segment of donors do you see the most growth potential in? This is an example of a giving society that we do with Stanford Athletics. It's called the Buck Cardinal Club. And I love how they have this very easily and the visual of it all. A lot of giving societies have a structure and a format that's like this, where you can clearly see the different perks here on the right, and then how much they need to give to get those perks. So you clearly you want to get all of the perks. So as you get more perks, you have to obviously give a little bit more. But I thought that this, when I started with Stanford, I thought that this graphic was so easy. It was great and easy to see how much more you could give. And we see a cutoff with Stanford Athletics at the $1,000 mark as well. So we try to encourage them with baseball regular season, invitation to football preseason, invitation to football sign day reception. So these are all really cool events that we all have in our wheelhouse, but it's advertising them more. How do we push people to get to that next round? This is a great one. Is anyone here from USGA? I know everyone is different. Yes. Okay. So USGA has an amazing membership giving society. I love the way that they had it on their website. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's like 7 different memberships that they can go after. So we have a USGA member. They can become a member of the 1894 Club, the Champion Club. And as you click across the website, or as you click across, you can see what that means. So an individual membership is $36. And then if you get to Champion Club, it's a little bit more. And then you can see all the gifts that come with it. So, I know it seems like a big task to take on these giving societies, but you don't have to start like this overnight and have multiple giving societies. With the Giants, we just had one, and it helped our board of directors get more people to be donating to the Giants Community Fund. But it really, really was important with the donors that we had, just bringing them to that next level. These are some more examples that I really like. So again, you'll see kind of 2 sides of the budget on this slide. So this is like a credit card basically. It's a really nice card. That's one of our giving societies at Stanford. It's the Athletics Director Circle. And our donors can kind of like flash it when they're going to different parts of Stanford. So they'll get parking, they get access to the director's level, they get access to hospitality in certain areas. And honestly, are things that they were getting already, but it just kind of makes it a little bit more elite and makes them feel like they're a little bit part of the club more. And we just introduced that earlier this year for football season. It's been going very well. So it just goes to show you that little small things can make a big difference. I think this is going to help with our retention in general too when it comes to our athletics director circle, that they like to feel a little bit special. On the other side, these is more of the lower budget. So when it came to our giving society for the Giants Community Fund, we created hats, we had pins that we were giving out. So that didn't cost a lot of money. I think it was like $200 to $300 that we just sort of kept in our front office. And then we were able to give those out. And you would be surprised, these donors are just proud to wear shirts, they're proud to wear pins. It depends on what you see in your demographic of what items people like. Maybe you add that to your survey if you are to do a survey for your donors and see if you are to create a giving society, what do people like? What motivates people? What different sorts of paraphernalia do they want? And what will they wear? Does anyone have any questions so far? Does anyone have a giving society? Stewardship, GiA. So the power of clean data. This is something that is very hard for nonprofits in general, and it isn't obviously the most glamorous part of being a part of a nonprofit. With the Giants Community Fund, we had a CRM, so a customer relationship management tool or a database that was over 25 years old. It was built on just Excel documents or Excel sheets, and it did its job, but it really wasn't allowing us to get to the next level. It is very hard. CRMs in general can be very confusing and complicated. I led our implementation from the Excel spreadsheets to Salesforce. So Salesforce has a wing that's just salesforce.org. That's the nonprofit side of Salesforce. You can get a discount. It comes with people that can help you. And so we were able to pivot from our very, very old database to Salesforce, and it was a huge learning experience. I hosted office hours every Thursday with our executive director and our development team just for them to come in and ask questions of what does this mean? What does this word mean? And half the time I didn't even know because I was learning myself, but it allowed us to come together and really learn and step away from the crutch of our old database into our new database. And the reason why I talk about that is because you can't do any donor engagement. You can't really do any giving societies if you don't have clean data. And by clean data, I mean data where you're trying to avoid duplicates as much as possible. I know it's very hard, but making sure you're merging data, making sure that your donors are separated between if they're donating through their company or if they're donating as an individual. That's also huge. And also understanding anniversaries. So donors want to be able to be, like we were talking about in the wheel, they want to know that they matter beyond their donation, and recognizing their anniversaries and honestly even recognizing their birthdays can come in handy because it makes them feel special, it makes them feel a part of your organization, specifically on anniversaries, being able to say, thanks for giving to the Giants Community Fund for 5 years, or thanks for a decade of support. You've really helped us do X, Y, and Z over the past 10 years. The database was very intimidating for my team and still can continue to be intimidating. So if you have a database that you don't necessarily love at this point, totally makes sense. You can start small. There are plenty of CRMs that are out there. There's Donor Perfect. There's Salesforce.org. There are many that we did research on, but it is really important to have a CRM that you trust and a CRM that allows you to get to the next level. But it may take some time. It took our Giants Community Fund team about 2 years to go from our old database to just being live on Salesforce. And then from there, we had our weekly office hours to really ask any questions people might have. And it also helped with donor retention. There were so many donors on our old database that we didn't even know had fallen off when it went during COVID. Obviously, COVID was a time where people didn't have extra resources to give. And then now we're seeing in 2023, 2024, people are wanting to give. They're wanting to go to these events. They're wanting to be a part of things a little bit more. But with our old database, we weren't able to see where that drop-off was. And it allowed us to really shine a light on this massive drop that we had during COVID and how we can engage with them a little bit more, whether that was having a donor cultivation event and inviting them to the donor cultivation event, whether that was inviting them to be a part of our giving society or just inviting them to a game. So the power of clean data, I know is huge, but I know can be very intimidating, but there's a ton of resources online about it. I would be happy to talk to anybody about databases in general. I learned so much about Salesforce, so much about CRMs these past 2 to 3 years with the Giants Community Fund. And going from absolutely zero knowledge to it and now feeling like in Stanford, we also use Salesforce, so feeling proficient in it as well. So that's the end of my presentation, but I wanted to open it up to anyone if they have any questions about anything we talked about today. Go ahead.
Yeah, you touched on a little bit, but have you noticed what trends have you noticed in giving over the last couple of years, obviously with the pandemic? That altered a lot of things for you. Yeah. But again, as you touched on, come back around. But I'm just curious what kind of trends you noticed.
So I was at the Giants during that time, and we didn't have games. games, or we were able to have fans in person, and I know everyone here, we were all impacted heavily. 2021 really was still very hard. I would say 2022, 2023 was for the first few years we felt like people wanted to be a part of community again. And I now with our messaging, especially with the Giants, we kind of put our language around welcoming people back, being a part of our team, because a huge part of the pandemic was loneliness, and people didn't feel like they were able to talk or be around other organizations. So our language was, especially with our Giving Society, was just be a part of our team, join us in any way that you can. I would say that I would not say we're back to where we were pre-2020, but we're definitely getting there. I think it has a lot, for the Giants, had a lot to do also with the team performance. But I think that when it comes to donors, we had our like tried and true diehards; those never went away. But it was the cusp donors that were really fell off, and we tried to focus on those. When we did our new CRM, we were able to really highlight them and then do a lot of reach out when it comes to them. Great question.
I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about how you all at Stanford are handling asking for money with Stanford Athletics versus asking for NIL money versus the school asking for money, because, you know, on a much smaller scale, we're asking for donations to our scholarship fund, the military initiatives, adaptive, all the different stuff. So how do you balance asking for money from all these different organizations that ultimately are trying to achieve the same goal?
Yes, that's a great question. So joining a completely space that was very new for me. However, with the Giants, we were battling people like our season ticket members asking for money for tickets as well as donating to the Giants Community Fund. I'm not a fundraiser on our Stanford Athletics team. I'm more just like donor relations, donor engagement, but it involves just having conversations with our donors, really sitting down and understanding what they want, and so they understand where the money is actually going. I think when it comes to NIL things, people are just a little bit not misinformed, but they don't know the full picture. So they are thinking that if they donate to the collective, they donate to NIL, that's also giving to their scholarship. And that's not the case. So when we are doing these reports that we send out, it is very clear that when they donate to Stanford Athletics, that they're donating to scholarship, they're donating to education, and it's not necessarily NIL. But it's clear communication. I think it comes down to that. But it is very tricky, and it's a landscape that we are definitely learning right now and trying to figure out how we can navigate this new collegiate athletic space. That's a great question. Yes.
Do you have boots on the ground at events where you have a tent set up with staff people to gain even dollars from random people coming through the door and having donors there explaining what I'm a donor, and they start to gather from actually being at the event site, and then there's the cat box, people walking by dropping anywhere from a couple of dollars to, a couple of Benjamins going in there. Like, do you ever do that?
The Giants Community Fund, we definitely did that a lot more than I see at Stanford. At Stanford, we have presence at most of the bigger games, so football, men's and women's basketball, soccer, and the people that are there are more so engaging with existing donors that are there already, but we have presence there, so if people have questions, they can come up and ask. However, with the Giants Community Fund, I would attend like San Francisco street fairs and just be there and talk about, so the Giants Community Fund, our money would go to the Junior Giants, which is free baseball and softball programs to youth 5 through 13 all up and down Northern California. And we would talk about Junior Giants. We would collect donations there. So that is definitely more boots on the ground, but that's where we were at when it came to the Giants Community Fund. We just felt like every dollar really mattered. But that kind of goes back to strategy in general of focusing on your current donors or focusing on cultivating more, depending on how many people you have on your team. You can do both. With the Giants Community Fund, we tried to do both, but then when we started thinking about strategy a little bit more, we tried to focus on more of the donor retention, so the people that had dropped off, where instead of putting our energy and time into attending the fairs, we just felt like we weren't getting as much donations in person. But we would have campaigns throughout the baseball season where we would be at the game at Oracle Park and really try to catch people there. So that was very helpful too.
Maybe you said this and I missed it. Did you say how many times you communicate with the donors?
I didn't. So we do a report every fiscal year, and that is what I showed before. So that's once, but then we do a lot of newsletters and a lot of emails, probably on a monthly to every 2 month basis, and then we also have fundraisers reach out. But with the Giants, we would do quarterly reach outs with newsletters and reports.
Did you find out how much is too much?
With the Giants, we were doing too much at first. It was like flooding their inbox, and when we were doing our survey, it was overwhelming. So we scaled it back a little bit, and we felt like that was a little bit more effective and effective with our time as well. I think that's where it comes to surveys, understanding what your donors like and what they want. With the Giants, we would do more obviously during the season, baseball season, because people wanted to hear about players and everything. And then during off season, we would still just try to reach out once or twice. But we got feedback on our survey and kind of scaled it back accordingly.
So final question.
Yep.
End of the year, people have got to start making donations.
Yep.
How often would you hit them up for end of the year tax?
We start November 1st, and at the Giants, we start November 1st, and would try to ping them, probably like three to four times before the end of the year, if we had seen that they had donated in the past. So
Right.
I would pull reports on Salesforce from 2020 to current, and see on Salesforce you can kind of do columns to see where it dropped off, and then we would have either our board members reach out and put together an email for our board members to reach out, or myself or our development director would reach out. I would say that the emails sometimes just didn't go anywhere, but at least we knew that we were reaching out. But year end is definitely a time where individual reach outs I think are more important than newsletters, because it's that one-on-one connection.
On the end of year campaign, we're starting one right now.
Yeah.
My suggestion is to do online research, and there's tons of tools on how to structure it, calendars, content, everything. You just got to plug in your own information. The challenge is scaling it to your capabilities. What can you actually do? We're doing ramp up emails, kind of share the story. 2 formal solicitation letters, which still generate the most money, which is amazing. And then we'll have weekly email solicitations, and then a ramp up to the end of the year. But that we're kind of on a small to maybe sort of medium scale for an end of the year. But look online, there's tons of resources.
At the Giants meet, we would also do like white envelopes to send out. I was trying to move our team away from those, but a lot of the demographic of our donors was on the older side. So sending out donating online was something that they weren't necessarily comfortable with. So we would still receive a lot of money in checks at the end of the year. So it was something that we were ideally trying to move away from, but we tracked who would give that way. And so we made sure if they had given that way in the past, we would definitely send them a white envelope. And then we try to push it a little bit, but they're very expensive to send. So we were trying to figure out what would make the most sense. We didn't want to leave those checks on the table.
You're right, it is expensive. It still ends up being the biggest giving.
For the Giants, it did too, yeah.
What it does nowadays, especially with younger donors, it catches their attention. They feel such a personal touch, which is ridiculous, but they do. And then they go online and make their gift.
Yeah.
So they're still worth it.
I think they're still worth it too. We still receive so many checks in the mail, so. But I would be strategic and not just send them out to 5,000 people, because they add up a lot.
Sorry, one question.
No, that's okay.
Do you know the percentage of alumni giving at Stanford right now in regards to, and you can just speak to athletics if you want. I know it's probably higher than most. I'm assuming it's higher than most, but and when do you start asking for that?
None of the percentage is high. That is something that really, it didn't shock me when I moved to Stanford, but it was very interesting, the amount of Stanford alums, and specifically former student athletes that come back and donate. I think it depends on So with Stanford, you can choose to donate into different buckets, basically. So if they're a scholarship endowment, it depends on the fiscal year. But if it's year end, my fundraisers have started doing that this week. So November 1st is sort of when the reach outs begin. And those are just individual emails. In the next few weeks, we're going to start calling as well. So it's going to be a full team calling. It's something that I've learned this, that they started doing that in 2020, picking up the phone and calling.
They have student athletes call as well, or just your team?
Just our team right now.
You mentioned tracking engagement online. How in depth do you go with that? What channels are you tracking? And you're connected and all with each individual. So
we can see. You mean like when we send out newsletters, like opening?
Yeah, newsletters or even social media stuff, whatever it might be.
We can. So when we do some of our reports, we send out some of our reports through Quiller. It's an online platform that you can track who opens your reports, and that's been very helpful because we can see geographically where they are, and then we can go into their database and make note of it. That's something that's been harder for our team to remember to track, but that's a huge part about this is my Giants Community Fund team too. No matter what interaction you have, if you're seeing it on Quiller, if you're seeing them interact on social media, it should go in your CRM, because this is kind of goes into sort of love languages in a way of what makes them tick. So I think a lot of that process is manual, making sure that it's actually in their contact report on the CRM. But we try to track newsletters. We just proposed to our team a few weeks ago to switch some of our acknowledgement letters. Right now, they're all handwritten, signed by our athletic director, to go to Thank You or Grativid, which is an online platform, so that we can track to see if they're opening those as well. Obviously, the world right now is going towards more data-driven, so we're just trying to make sure that every contact that we have brings a metric back, and that we can have that all documented on their contact report.
In the spirit of sharing, if people aren't aware of Market Smart, but I don't know. Do you know Market Smart? No. Okay. So the Greg Warner, the founder, he's an old marketing guy, got into philanthropy because he realized that philanthropy is not using all the market-driven data that's available through sales and everything. So check it out, Market Smart. They have a product. I'm not telling you, but it's something I want to try to buy and use, where it'll integrate with all your CRM, whatever, your website, and everything, and track a whole digital path for potential donors. I'm hoping we do it, but it's not cheap. But it takes the work of probably 3 people trying to do all that stuff.
That's awesome. Another thing that we use with the Giants is called iWave. It's market segmentation as well. Not the most cheap either, but you're able to see potential donors that you can target from there, and it shows up on your CRM. So you can say, depending on certain segments, this person would be a really good candidate to be a donor for the Giants Community Fund. Reach out to them and see if they can get on board. But again, all of these different tools, that sounds really awesome. They definitely cost money, so it's one of those things that you have to pick and choose depending on your budget that you have. Salesforce was something that we raised money for, honestly, for many years until we were able to actually do it. But that sounds really awesome too. Yes.
How often is the percentage do you ask donors for money versus just communicating them?
It's a good question. Yeah, so that goes back to the fund wheel. I don't know the percentage off the top of my head. I can go back to the Giants because I was there for 7 years and that was one of my main jobs. We used to really ask for money a lot, and we got to the point of donor fatigue. And so we had to go back to the drawing board, and that's why we implemented the Giving Society, because we wanted them to feel special for their donation, and then eventually ask for more, but we needed to show appreciation for where they are at that specific time. I don't know the percentage off the top of my head, but I will say that was something post-2020 that we realized, okay, we need to do a better job of recognizing what we have before we go back to the bank and ask for more. I don't know the answer for Stanford Athletics, unfortunately. I would say Stanford Athletics does do a really good job of our reporting and reaching reaching out just to acknowledge in general. But again, there's more resources there that we're able to reach out a little bit more.
Yeah, it's obviously a kind of rhetorical question because I think a classic mistake is just that's all you do is ask
Right.
for money. And I think the best nonprofits are probably 3 to 1, not
I agree. And we all do fun events no matter what, and it's just being able to recommend bringing people to those events, kind of understanding how you can acknowledge these donors with what they like, and that goes back to the survey, and that makes them feel appreciated and want to donate more without you necessarily asking. That's kind of like the perfect donor. So that kind of goes back to donor relations in general, showing that they matter beyond their giving, showing that they're making a difference. But I will say that is something that most nonprofits can work on, because at the end of the day we need more money, so we're inevitably needing to go back to ask. But we at the Giants, we're trying to do a better job of that. Yes.
I saw your chart on kind of your far right with your $50,000 donation categories and perks. How do you differentiate that between like a major gift, like a 6-figure plus gift, and do you treat those different? Is that a different category? Do you think more or less? Do you have, what kind of scale is that beyond like that really major gift, 6-7 figure gift?
Yeah. So at the Giants, we've never experienced those. So I was like, oh, I don't know. The walking to Stanford, we've definitely experienced those. So that was a culture shock for me, if I'm being honest. Those like endowments, those 6-7 figure dollar gifts are treated, they're given more gifts, and we have a new endowment for a coach, and we're doing a breakfast just for them. So you kind of have to go into a little bit more of a unique bucket. Those aren't really the people that you're targeting when it comes to your giving society, I would say. Unless it is, and that would be amazing. But I think the Giving Society are really the quote-unquote lower to mid-level gifts, depending on your organization. The 6 to 7 figure gifts, I think with those, you kind of know the donor already. Although that's what I've been experiencing at Stanford. You kind of already understand them because we've been working on this gift for months or years. So when we just got this recent run, we are framing a tennis racket and getting it signed and giving it to them at a breakfast. So it is, I think it depends, so unique depending on who's giving. I don't think that they would really be influenced by these sort of quote unquote minor steps, whereas someone that's giving $200 might be influenced to get $500 because now they can be a season ticket member for basketball. So yeah, with the Giants, our sort of like higher level gifts were still in like the 100,000 range. So we were recognizing them in an individual way as well. That's a good question. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you, everyone. It was so great to talk to everyone. I hope you have a